Our next presenter is Eric Berg. Eric taught at MacMurray College in Illinois for 15 years, and he is going to present about how Mabel Holle and how, the importance of private colleges and how that influenced her and allowed her to kind of roll into a baseball career and be one of the first in the league. So Eric, take it away.
Thank you for hosting this and the gracious introduction and the really impressive leadoff hitter in this segment for today. We also will have a little bit of a Blue Sox connection. Mabel played for the Blue Sox in 1943, so we'll be able to sort of connect on another level there. So this grows out of a personal experience, just a little bit of background. I'm a philosophy professor and a mid to late career now. So sort of, changes happen. And I've picked up a real strong interest in the philosophy of sport and athletics. And I taught at MacMurray College, a small, very old private liberal arts institution. It was an all-female academy until 1955 and has all these deep traditional roots that you would expect this college on the prairie in a small town in west central Illinois would have, and all the pressure that a small college would have, especially in the modern era with finances. And we never really had solid finances. It's been a struggle almost the entire existence for McMurray for 174 years. But that allowed innovation. It allowed quick turns, quick changes to happen, sometimes good, sometimes not so good for the college, but it did allow for innovations. And this presentation that we have today grew out of a request by the president of the college in 2015, I believe, the end of the 2015 academic year. The president of the college asked senior faculty to put together classes that would draw in freshmen and sophomores and keep them at the college. So they wanted experienced faculty members that had taught a lot to create one class and offer it only to freshmen and sophomores. And it would be a way for senior faculty to connect with these early McMurray College students, show them what the classroom could be like, and hold them hopefully for the entire 4 years there. And so I answered the call, and there was some flexibility with the curriculum committee to be able to design classes. And I designed a class called From Plato to Jackie Robinson. It was subtitled Social Political Philosophy in Baseball. And the first time I ran the class, doing the research and gearing up for it, I had vaguely remembered or recalled that we had an All-American Girls Professional Baseball League player that was from McMurray or from Jacksonville. And then, of course, the research was very easily opened up on Mabel's life at McMurray. So I ran this class From Plato to Jackie Robinson. It became extraordinarily popular at the college, so popular that we ran a lottery for students to be able to get into the class, because I capped it at 22 to keep it somewhat personal that way. And we just opened up more and more about Holle's life in the class as we went forward. And then, of course, the college closed in 2020. And I want to have another way to remember her life and to keep that particular special story alive. So it's the research approach to this has not been typical of the way I've approached things. Plus, it's much more historical than I'm used to doing. Philosophers always have to ask the question why, which is a very good question. But here it's more what at this point, and a little bit of why. So a little quick history of McMurray College. Founded in 1846, it's had a Methodist affiliation, but that certainly became less over the years as the scholarship funds dried up for the Methodist Church. The affiliation between the two separated, which helped enrollment. I think it wasn't so targeted at that time. It was Illinois Academy for Women prior to 1930, and then Senator McMurray gained his wealth in Acme steel from World War I money, certainly, And the name of the college was changed to McMurray College. And most of the buildings that existed at the college were built under with his money and during that time. So the architecture at the college, Georgian Revival, matched just about all the buildings. I think there were just 2 buildings that didn't have that particular style. Like I said, it was exclusively a women's college until 1955, and that does figure prominently in my understanding of how Mabel Holle became who she was and made the important contribution to professional baseball that she made. And we closed March 27th was when it was announced. The last day of operation for the college was June 1st, 2020. This is the layout of McMurray College. At the end, the baseball field is in the middle of the campus, or was in the middle of campus. And that always was very important to me because the baseball field wasn't remote. It wasn't on another part of town. You didn't have to make a special trip. You simply walked out of the building you were teaching in and they were playing baseball or they were practicing baseball. It's right there, dead center, number 14 on the PowerPoint. So students would come out and congregate even between classes. Faculty and staff would come out and congregate. So there was this pretty solid sort of tactile connection to baseball on the campus for almost its entire existence. The early days of baseball at McMurray started in 1958. So 55 is when McMurray starts to become, or allows to become co-ed. They have 2 separate colleges right away, a men's college and a women's college, and then the 2 merge. And in 58, you get the first baseball team taking the field at McMurray. So 1-9 the first time out, not too great. But then by 61, Coach Wall got a 6-3 record out of the team and started to become successful. 69 was the best early season with a record of 15-5 under Coach George. And here you have a wonderful picture of Coach Wall in the early gymnasium. And that Highlander on the left side of the screen over Coach Wall's right shoulder, the McMurray College Highlanders, that was preserved, and that is at the Historical Society for Morgan County in Illinois, and it's prominently displayed there as one of the pieces. So that survived from way back in the 50s and was just moved around, and it's still part of appreciation of a college that no longer is. This is the view of the baseball field at McMurray. So you can just see the wonderful positioning of the college. Left field, the top left-hand picture on this slide. The building behind the storage shed there is the library, and then the building right above the batter's helmet is the chapel. So those are absolute centers of activity at the college, or were centers of activity at the college, and just float out and watch baseball. One of the non-Georgian Revival buildings there is dead center in center field. That's the sort of the campus hub. It was the Union bookstore, meeting rooms, etc. Right over center field, lots of activity there. And then right field is the education complex, the swimming pool, and the gym where the young man is hitting off a tee. And there were lots and lots of classrooms in that building. So there were porches and balconies off that building where students would just come out, faculty and staff would just come out and watch baseball there. So there always was this idea that baseball was pretty central to this small college, sort of physically or literally and figuratively took a prominent place. I managed to recover some artifacts from the college right towards the end. I was wandering around campus, sort of taking things in towards the end on May 5th, 2020. And I found these 3 items in the trash in the home dugout. Well, 2 items, yeah, all 3 items were in the trash in the home team dugout. And so the upper left-hand corner is home plate. The maintenance crew, the season was done. It was COVID. So the season was done. So our maintenance crew had already dug up home plate and had proceeded to do their normal maintenance on the baseball field, putting it away for the year or getting it prepped for summer baseball. And they had dug up home plate and were changing that. That was part of what was in the budget. So home plate was sitting in the trash, and I rescued home plate from the college. That's the last lineup card of any home game played at McMurray College. It was a loss to Central College in Central Iowa, but you see in red, those are the McMurray players there. I know every one of them. I'm still in contact with a number of those. And then the dugout chart was still in the trash from the very last home game. So there's this weird sort of archival piece that I have from baseball at the college. Jacksonville is the city where McMurray was, and it has a very long, interesting history with baseball. 1865 is the first recorded organized team in Jacksonville called the Hardens. 1865 is pretty early. We're not wearing gloves very much then yet, probably. You see a catcher's mitt there, but you probably still have some barehanded players at that point. Early newspaper reports from Jacksonville give an accounting of this team that played in Jacksonville, and they played at League Park, which no longer exists in Jacksonville as a baseball stadium. Luther Taylor, nicknamed Dummy, of course, in those days, also was a Jacksonville baseball person. He was employed at the Illinois School for the Deaf in Jacksonville, Illinois. And he was a coach there and a house father at the Illinois School for the Deaf. And of course, they fielded a baseball team. And one of his pupils there went on to play baseball for the Cincinnati Reds, Dick Sepic. Taylor's dates are there, 1875 to 1858. It's another little sidebar on this particular institution that is no longer, but we had a very, very strong connection and commitment to deaf and hard of hearing students and deaf culture. So when I taught at McMurray, I believe I had 3 deaf colleagues as faculty members that taught in interpreting and deaf education. And we had lots of deaf students that attended McMurray and played sports at McMurray. So this integration into deaf culture was part of what you had to do as a faculty member there. And it really made it a special place for another reason that we had this sort of ethos at this wonderful little school. So the local All-American Girls Professional League baseball team was the Springfield Sallies, played in 1948, as I'm sure everybody on the panel knows a great deal about this, but that's not where Mabel played. So there's this weird deal that you had 25 miles to the west, you have the Springfield Sallies. Now she played earlier than this, but she did not make a revival or get involved with the Springfield Sallies and when they made their one and only appearance down the road. The Sallies came in 1948, but Springfield has an earlier history with women's baseball. So there's a 1904 recorded game between the Blondes and the Brunettes, which, from my research, is a fairly typical way to name some of those games. First games in which fans paid in Illinois to see women's players play there. And one of the least successful teams were the Sallies, and very short-lived, of course. They only played in 1948, and they weren't very successful that year. Their record's a little better than it gets credit for because they usually lumped in the traveling team of the Sallies, which made them very difficult to get wins when you're a traveling team only. Another, regret or unfinished business is what I should say. When I taught the course from Plato to Jackie Robinson, I always had a service project for my students. So we did a raffle. So we got permission to do a raffle, and we got some great prizes donated. Then we had a raffle. My students took charge of it and ran it. We raised $1,700 for Hamtramck Stadium in Detroit, one of the last purpose-built Negro League stadiums in the country. And at that time, it was in shambles, and they were rebuilding it. So MacMurray College makes this contribution by way of my students to Hamtramck Stadium. This class was on the schedule then for the year after college closed. And the project I was going to do was, there is no plaque commemorating where the Sallies played in Springfield. And we know precisely where the stadium was. So I was all set with the mayor and the alderperson in my ward in Springfield, because I lived in Springfield, to have this project going for my students to get some sort of governmental involvement in that and see what we could do about getting a plaque placed there. So it needs to be done, I think. So the Springfield team then was owned by a lumber dealer, Fitzpatrick, and he brought the Sallies to Springfield. The stadium then was named after his son, James Jr., who died very young. And the Sallies were there to help try to fill that stadium and make it economically viable. There's a contest to name the team, which was very typical and still kind of is very typical for minor league teams to do that. And the Sallies uniforms then were beautiful. They have a silhouette of Abraham Lincoln. They have a new iteration of the minor league team in Springfield. It was the Springfield Sliders, and it just recently changed to the Lucky Horseshoes. One of their uniforms at least touches on the Sallies' history of having a silhouette of Lincoln. It has more to do with the penny, the lucky penny, but it does touch on that connection between the Sallies and the current minor league team that was there at the time. No Central Illinois player ever played for the Sallies. It didn't seem to be a recruiting target to get local players in and to get, draw those players in. Mabel didn't really have any connection with the team as far as I can see, as even making appearances or pushing for the team. But they were yanked out of Springfield because of very poor attendance, along with the Colleens, and then they became an orphan team, where the team playing the last 2/3 of their season on the road. So when they played in Springfield, their record was 16-22, which is not terrible, especially for a startup. So before men played, Mabel Holle was certainly a ball player. That's one way to describe Mabel. I absolutely love this colorized picture of her. It's the smile on her face, it's the ball field, it's the leggings, the uniform, the tie around her neck, kerchief, and the baseball glove, and the hat. And she just really looks like a ball player there. You can see her dates: March 21, 1920, died December 11, 2011. Unfortunately for me, before my interest peaked in her career, so I wasn't able to make a connection through the college to Mabel or even her family at the time. She grew up in a house that played baseball and really instilled that in the children. This is from the secondhand accounts that I've been able to acquire. I hope to acquire more. But her father was also a semi-professional pitcher, so he certainly knew the game, played the game at a high level, and was influential in leading her along this course, which is an unusual course for a woman born in 1920, that she would start to play baseball. She developed a very strong throwing arm, as the newspaper accounts record her, and she started playing with boys on local teams. These are pickup games and church-sponsored games, but she did start to play in Central Illinois when she was a young woman with men. She was picked to play on the football team in her freshman and sophomore years in high school. I'd really like to know more about that. That would be a trip to the high school and the archives in that particular city, but that's a very interesting aspect of her life too, that she at that early age was already breaking into a territory that still has tremendous barriers, and that's American style football. She's a 1942 graduate of MacMurray College with her degree in physical education. And then she went on, we used to offer a master's degree in physical education. She came back after her time in professional athletics and earned her master's degree from MacMurray College. So she's an extraordinarily talented person to be an athlete at that level, have the fortitude to be able to play in male-dominated arenas, and then have the intellectual capability to do well at MacMurray College with her degree and be able to excel and go on for a master's degree at that point. So we have a very well-balanced person here with skill sets in a lot of areas that make her, I think, a really interesting person. There's some fabulous pictures that exist of Mabel at MacMurray College. There are more. I just haven't been able to get in the archives, because had the college still existed to this day, I would have direct and immediate access to all of this stuff. I could literally do it on my lunch break and find things. But now it's a trip it's archive access, it's getting the archivist ready for what I'm looking for. And a lot of it hasn't been sorted yet because, you know, the stuff has just been moved to the new archives home. But there are some digital images that the college was able to give me. So here you see a field hockey team at McMurray College with the library in the background in this photograph. There used to be a street that passed through there. You can see the wheel of a car in 1941. There's Holly on clearly marked with the arrow. Apologies to the woman who I blanked out her face. And then the horse is or mule, maybe donkey, is a really interesting aspect of that. One of the unique features of McMurray College was they had equine sports for the students there, and you either had to bring hay and straw with you or pay for it to house and keep the horses fed and well suited there. So there's lots of horses appear in pictures of McMurray College until they sort of phased that out after World War II. Here's another great picture of Holly at McMurray College again in 1941 in the gym, in the old gymnasium, again, sort of being this central figure, this leader at the college towards the end of her career here. She would have been a junior in college at this time, playing women's athletics for the college in 1941, again, during the winter season here. And there she is with the Blue Sox in 1943. So she graduates high school in 1938. And in her senior year of high school, her friend Shirley Jameson submitted her name for the tryouts at Wrigley Field. So her friend must have seen the talent that she had and the desire and the baseball background that she had to join the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. So as we all know very well in this panel, 280 women were invited and 60 were selected to become one of those. And she made the cut during that very elite sort of tryout and access to this life of professional sports, and particularly professional baseball in the American context, because baseball has this ethos around it, this tradition, this lore of being at the core of American culture, and to have access to that at a professional level in 1943 is just another part of a remarkable life that we're seeing here play out. Played third base and outfield for the Kenosha Comets in Wisconsin and the South Bend Blue Sox, but of course, like I said, did not play for the Springfield Sallies. There's also some evidence that she played shortstop. So that tells me I've been a baseball player my whole life. In fact, I played yesterday, adult old guy baseball, but nevertheless, but third base, you have to have an arm. That's a long throw. It's still a very long throw for me. I'm a catcher by trade, and I play third base when I'm not catching, and that's a long throw over there. Center field, of course, is where one of your best players is usually positioned, and shortstop is where another one of your best players is traditionally positioned. She bats right, she threw right, and she wore a uniform number 9. And yes, there were plans to do some things with the number 9 around the college to subtly bring the current crop of students and faculty in touch with this remarkable graduate that we had from McMurray College. So the league did not renew her contract in the beginning of the 44 season. She tried out, but she didn't make the cut this time. So then she picked up with the rival National Girls Baseball League in Chicago, where she did play the next 2 seasons. That's where I've not gone. I really want to look into that, but I imagine the research is a little more difficult with that league than the other one. She became a physical education teacher then after her time in baseball. She was a coach and athletic administrator for Waukegan schools for most of her professional career, and she was the first person to chair the Illinois High School Association Girls Track and Field Advisory Committee. So she continued to push and push and push where she felt her talents would take her as an adult after baseball. On the end of her baseball career in 1988, November, she was enshrined to the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. In 1993, McMurray College inducted her into the the Sports Hall of Fame that McMurray had. And a scholarship was created in 1993 for female athlete that simultaneously displayed on the field and off the field leadership. I am pushing very hard to get this scholarship continued. The Alumni Association continues to give scholarships to descendants of McMurray graduates, their children where they go to school. And I think the Mabel Holle scholarship needs to be part of that. I don't give up easily on these things. A liberal arts college of distinction. So first and foremost, all credit to Mabel Holle. However, the unique curriculum, mission, and history of McMurray College did help push, I think, an already very motivated person to do some things that were maybe outside the norm. The curriculum certainly helped do that. I have some citations here from the curriculum that was engaged for the 1940s when Mabel Holle was there. And the goal from the president was then to provide the intellectual and moral education of women in the interests of government and society. Boy, the end of that quote is important, because if McMurray's college's mission was to push their graduates in the best interest of society, that's what Mabel Holle did by the avenue of professional athletics and then high school athletics. The mission of the college went on to say that it was there to provide a better fit for women, where curricula are designed to meet women's needs as distinguished from men. So they understood their student body, they understood their mission at that point was to make it for them and not just photocopy other curricula. And when extracurricular activities permit for their full participation, offer them opportunities for training and leadership. Part of the extracurricular mission of extracurricular activities at McMurray College in the 40s was to provide leadership for the students, leadership training for the students. And again, you see that Mabel Holle exemplifies that, I think, all the way. McMurray allowed Mabel Holle to act with integrity. And what I mean by integrity is it engaged her talents and formed her identity as she goes forward in this remarkable life that we have. And I see that I'm right up against my time and I am done. So I thank everybody for their time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think we might have time for like maybe one question.
Great.
Anybody in the chat? Oh, here is her name pronounced Mabel or Mabel?
I've heard the latter, but this is very interesting because there was a little bit with Holly or Holy too, and as that gets handed down from administrator to administrator, and the family gets more distant from the institution itself, that was something that I contacted one person and I was sure, and then somebody else contacted me and they weren't so sure. So yeah, that's where I need to find the time to just have a conversation with family members and get that.
It's the difference between written tradition and oral tradition right there.
Exactly.
Very, very glaringly.
Yeah.
I thank you so much for that presentation.
Thank you.
It feels like the world lost a little something when that college went away. We're quite sorry, but we're really happy to hear you're preserving that history and making it available and making sure it stays known and in the public eye. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
I think